First of all, I would like to welcome you all to our talk. Glad you could join us. Feels a little bit weird with you guys wearing headphones, so need to get used to that a bit, but I hope it will work out. We would like to start this talk with a small experiment. I would like to ask you all to raise your hand, and we're going to ask you a couple of questions. The moment you answer one of these questions with no, please lower your hand, and we would like to see how many people will remain in the end. First question, could you please lower your hand the moment you're not working primarily as a software developer? So if you're in sales, marketing, whatever, please lower your hand. Could you please lower your hand if you mainly work on self-employed projects, so small projects where you do both the infrastructure and the coding and everything yourself? Could you please lower your hands if you don't have rights to your acceptance environment, so you're not able to log into your acceptance environment and make changes over there? Could you please lower your hands if you don't have sudo rights on production environments? Okay, some people. We had that one. And could you please lower your hands if you consider the environments you have access to do not be critical? And with critical, I mean if they would go down, would it cost a lot of money, or could people's lives be in danger the moment they go down? Okay, quite a smaller group we got. What we wanted to accomplish with this is that the stories we're going to tell you today is from 3 developers who joined the company and immediately got those rights. We got rights to production environments which can be really dangerous if they go down or cost a lot of money. Like I told you, we're going to tell 3 personal stories today. We'll start with mine, so I'll give you a small introduction. My name is Raymond Witt. I started working as a front-end developer around 6 years ago at a small company in Almere, about 20-25 people. Straight out of school, did my internship over there. They hired me, stupidly enough. From the moment I joined, there were a lot of experienced people around me who could teach me a lot and I could learn a lot from. But sadly enough, the company slowly started to go downhill. And I like to think that didn't happen because of me joining, but you never know. One of the things that happens first, usually, if you're in a situation like that, is that the most experienced people leave first. So that left me in a situation where I had a lot of responsibility, a lot of possibilities as well, joining into pre-sales, all kinds of stuff that as a junior developer you usually don't do. But I noticed that I didn't have anybody around me who I could learn from anymore, both soft skills and technical skills. So I was up for a new challenge. So I called a recruiter who was trying to headhunt me already for 4 years, told him I'm looking for something else. A week later, I was 5 interviews further, talked to multiple front-end agencies, the typical kind of agencies, and I didn't find a click with any of them. So eventually they came up with this managed service provider, Schuberg Philis, and I never heard of it, but they told me the company was trying to transition from a managed service provider to a software company, and they needed help with that. They were looking for front-enders, and they hired already some great software developers. So I decided to join, and a month later I was working there. And one of the first things that happens when someone joins our company is that he sends out 2 emails. And one of them is basically saying, hi, I'm Raymond, and I'm really good at front-end development, and these are my skills. And the second one is, I added my SSH key to the matrix. Can you please enable access to our customer environments? And I sent out that first email, and I didn't send out the second email with the idea I'm just a front-end developer. I don't need access to our customer environments. What should I do there? And oh boy, was I wrong eventually, because I made my first code changes, and I was all really happy, and they were merged into master, and it auto-deployed to acceptance, and was like, yeah, great, I contributed something. And then I asked, so how do we get this to production? And the answer was, that's what you are going to do. I was like, uh-oh. They told me, yeah, it's simple. You just log on to the server, run this script, and everything will go automatically. But here I was as a front-end developer, not knowing anything about Linux, how to log on to a server, how to run that script, what sudo, I don't know. So with some help of my colleagues, eventually I figured it out, and I deployed my code, and I was really happy about it. And then I looked back on this whole process, and I noticed that I only changed some JavaScript and HTML, and it took 25 minutes to build the entire project and deploy it to production. And I found that a really long time for making an HTML change, fixing a typo. That was a really long time. So I looked into why that was happening. And basically what they set up was an application with a Django backend and 25 front-end applications, building all of that in a single Jenkins job and then deploying that as one artifact. They told me we're doing continuous delivery. That's really cool. But what I noticed is that by a build time which takes 25 minutes, people start to ask each other, can you please wait with starting a build, and my stuff can go with it as well. Meaning that your total time to get something from code to production becomes even longer. So I propose, let's split it up. Let's make 25 repos on GitHub, 25 build plans, and deploy every front-end application separately. And my team told me, that's a great idea. We really want that. But we don't have time, so if you want to get this done, you should do it. The problem with that was that we manage our service with Chef and cookbooks and shell scripts and all that stuff I never touched before. So all of a sudden, I was learning a lot of new skills to be able to do this. And over time, I learned how to cookbook and all that stuff and manage our servers and do some operational work. And over time, I learned about our infrastructure and how the networking works and what a cloud actually is and what a VPC is and what a VM is in all that thing and a router and all that stuff. And looking back at that, I learned a lot of stuff, and I didn't only learn new skills, but I also became a better developer. Because I noticed that by knowing our infrastructure and our networking, I could more easily debug issues. I could find the log files. I could recognize an issue, whether it was a networking issue or a firewall issue or a coding issue. That made my life already a lot easier. One of the other things I noticed is that I started to think differently. Where with coding, when I wanted to make a change, I would make the change, put it in, try it out, and if it would fail, I would just do git revert and it's gone again. If you're working on your production environment and you're planning on making a change on your database, for example, or you're having issues there, I noticed that one of the first things I learned was to think about how to revert the stuff you're going to do before making the actual change. Because if you lose your data, you're having a bigger issue. So you need to think ahead more. And that was a different way of thinking and just relying on your version control. One of the other things I noticed is that knowing your infrastructure and knowing how to use it makes a lot of development tasks easier. We've probably all been in a situation where you wanted to write tests, run them, and make sure that your database is every time in the exact same state and the entire landscape is in the state you expected. But people are also using that acceptance environment for testing, manual testing, and please don't touch my data and stuff like that. My team currently is, for example, working with Kubernetes and microservices. And because all developers now know how all of that works, we recognize that we could easily just spin up our entire environment, do our tests on that, and break it down again. Making that task a lot easier. For example, me as a front-end developer, I just spin up our entire backend in a separate namespace in Kubernetes in the cloud. I port forward the ports to my local machine, and I can just develop against the backend services in the cloud, running maybe a specific branch my colleague is working on, which is not in master yet, and I can already work with it. So I noticed that by gaining these new skills, I also became a better developer. And if I look back at that, I joined the company with the idea, let's help the company become a software company and maybe improve my front-end development skills. But in the end, I widened my skills and became, because of that, a better developer. I learned that DevOps is more than just sitting together in the same room and then hope things get done. It's actually working together, learn from each other. And during this whole experience, when I was changing our deployment street, I broke that deployment street multiple times. I broke our build slave, I broke the builds, I broke everything. And instead of people telling me you shouldn't do that, or mocking me, or saying don't touch that, they always helped me to get it fixed. And that environment where people want to help you instead of mocking you is really important to be able to learn these skills. So I think in the end, I became a better software developer by learning some operational tasks. That was my talk. I hope some of you can take away something from that. And I would like to give the word to Sarah now, and she's going to tell her story.
Hello, my name is Sarah Grunison. I am a software engineer. I come from California, actually, but have lived the last 17 years abroad. I lived almost 15 years in Switzerland and the last 2.5 years in the Netherlands. I have kind of a different story than Raymond. I'm not a newbie in the field. I consider myself a software engineer end-to-end, through and through. I have, in my lifetime as an engineer, worked on many different projects for many different industries, banks, energy, telecommunications, even hardware. I have worked on many different types of code bases, from scripting, C++, assembly, EVA, DTS protocols, you name it, and experienced all kinds of databases, etc. So when I joined Schuberg Philis, I went through a different, I would say, emotional curve than Raymond. So today I will be telling you the emotions that I experienced as a new software engineer in this great company. So the first emotion that I feel when I enter this company is happiness, but also confidence. I'm confident that I'm definitely an end-to-end engineer. I feel I can handle talking with a customer. I know how to gather requirements. I know how to come up with designs. I know how to do the code. I know how to do the testing. So I can do this. I feel confident. I feel happy. And that's where my feelings start. But I find I have joined a different kind of company than I have in the past. So I always worked for companies which provided services to our customers. Software solutions were the focus. So everything was based on functional requirements of the customer, and I had a very defined border where software engineering starts and where it ends. And I felt I was put into this kind of company where there was this massive amount of infrastructure around it, and they expected me somehow to know this stuff, or that I should handle it. As Raymond said, we had immediate access to production. And when things needed to be done on production, they just said, hey, you can go there and change this field, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the feelings that I felt at this point in my path were quite insecurity. So I felt a little bit of the need to defend myself. Hey, I am a software engineer. I'm not an operations guy. This is where my start and end are. I was putting up a wall, defining a boundary. Everything out of that is not for me. That's for someone else. So that was kind of my mindset. I didn't feel like it wasn't that I couldn't do it. It's just in my path, if you imagine I started as a software engineer in the late 90s. You go into a company, you do your work as a software engineer, and someone else is handling the deployment, someone else is handling all of that other stuff, and I was never trusted to handle that stuff myself. So you start also not trusting yourself. So as time was passing, what I found was that because I was given access to production, I was given access to all of these cool deployment tools, I was given access to all these different things which I hadn't had access to before. But not only that, I was trusted. So I felt like I had all of these people around me that were really, really smart at operations, And instead of being the typical arrogant know-it-alls that say, hey, you know, you shouldn't touch this, you don't know what you're doing, and let us handle it, they just supported me. They gave me, hey, you can do that. Why don't you try it? And I'd be like, I'm afraid I might break it. That's okay. You know, we're here to help you if you break it. And so when you start to feel trusted, you find that you also start to feel a little bit more curious, and you start trying things. So I, at first, found the first time that I really did something big was I found that my development environment was really, really slow. It was crashing my computer all the time. We had all these Docker containers running locally on our development platform. And I heard a lot of other developers complaining about it, et cetera. So in the past, I would have just gone to and complained like, hey, everything is slow, why isn't it working? Someone else fix it. Instead, I decided, you know what, this is really irritating to me, so I'm going to try to find someone to help me that has this know-how, and I'm going to help them fix it. So we ended up coming up with the Kubernetes, what Raymond mentioned, also a solution. So running these services in the cloud instead of locally and forwarding the addresses to your computer. And it worked. So I could develop much faster. So that's just the first step. So there were more and more situations like that where instead of doing it, asking someone else to do it, I just went on and changed something and wait, and it works. So you start taking more and more steps. You start to get more curious because you have that support network there. People trust you, and they aren't there going to mock you or say that you don't know it or that it's stupid. So yeah, this slide expresses a feeling of humility. So when you start exploring this cloud of fuzzy stuff which you haven't really played with before, what you find is that you start to see that these operations guys are actually pretty smart. They have like really good systems in place. They can spin up things when something's broken, everything's backed up. They actually know how a lot of, I would say, development type of mythologies and stuff, but it's in a different environment, and you start to respect them. And they respect you because you are willing to try out what they know. And I think they also want to learn from you as a developer. So my next emotion here was humility. By opening up this world, so imagine I've been an engineer for a long, long time. Although I feel like with each additional project, each additional company I worked for, my know-how was always becoming more and more saturated. So I got another language, another database, another kind of library or something. But I felt that the end-to-end was quite defined. So there wasn't much more to learn. There wasn't much more room to grow as a software engineer. However, I was wrong. By embracing DevOps, by embracing operations, I have expanded end-to-end to some place where I didn't think was possible before. So I feel I not only look at situations of, okay, the functional boundaries of a solution, I can actually start to think about the customer's environment and maybe ways to make development faster and ways to fix things which I wouldn't have thought about before. So it's gone into the way I design, the way I program. So yeah, I can do it. I feel confident now. And as the world is a big circle, I ended up where I started. So I'm confident and I'm happy. But yeah, I've got a few extra tools in my tool belt, and I'm very excited, and I feel I am a better software engineer for the customers that we work for, and yeah, that's my story. So if you... Now Rens will explain his journey. Thank you.
Am I on? I've never had the opportunity to burp into so many ears at the same time. So I'll excuse myself up front. My name is Rens van Leeuwen. I'm just your average, typical software engineer. I have worked in not that many industries. Before I worked in the insurance industry, working on a big monolith, like over 1 million lines of code. The big thing where it was really a separate thing if you were either a software engineer or you were the person actually deploying your code, making it run in production. And I have sort of the tendency to look at a particular thing that's happening and then find a mental model, trying to get the gist out of what happened. And I guess that's part of what I will be doing in my small talk. So, CI/CD. I think it's the thing that basically a lot of software engineers and also infrastructure people are working towards. So it's just a common thing that is heard and applied everywhere. But if you actually look at it, it's a really big thing as well. It's not just your code, and especially software engineers have the natural tendency to think about code primarily, and not think about all that stuff that supports it and that sits sort of underneath your code. But actually, it would not be fair. And I think code is an important part, of course, because in the end, it's what the customers are looking for. They want stuff solved. And they don't care really about the vehicle that carries this. But still, it's a really big thing. It's hard to get going. It's hard to make turns if you need to be. And I think that when I started and I realized that all these mechanisms are in place and my code sits on top of it, it was kind of humbling to see that you have to really think about code sitting in a particular context. And I want to zoom in a bit on context. This was unexpected. So if you look at this, and then this, it really makes a difference what you think of the word general, and in different contexts, they really mean something else. So context really matters. And I think, especially as software engineers, we have a tendency to think of context on a functional level. We have been taught this way when we were trained, when we were in university, or did some other education. And it's only a natural thing. So you have to first be able to wrap your head around the problem at hand. So a customer comes to you with a question, I have business problem A or another problem. And basically what the software engineer has to do is find the appropriate abstraction levels, dig into the problem, and then actually try to solve it by writing software. And when I joined this company, it appeared to me that the customers of these companies also have the infrastructural problems. And the two things are sort of part of the same vehicle and the same proposition that we have to present them and make sure that everything actually works together and works together well. So instead of my natural tendency of only looking at the functional parts, which is of course obvious, I also noticed that there was this whole world of technical bits like networking, different operating systems, load balancers, firewalls, the whole shebang that sort of surrounded my code that I was not really aware of when I was working in my previous jobs, which was kind of an eye-opener to me. So, what did I do? I remember joining this company, you sort of get a 2-week brainwash experience where people will try to explain you the different aspects of the company. And you can think of a wide variety of topics like sales or the processes. And one of these meetings was about our cloud infrastructure. We have our own cloud software that we run in our data centers. And there was this topic, and this guy that did a presentation, and one of the people joining the session was a guy with a lot more infrastructural experience. And I remember sitting there, sitting through the session, and then at some point we had a hands-on, set up your own machine in the cloud, create a network of some sorts, a router. I remember looking at this guy sitting next to me, and he was up and running within minutes, and I was questioning myself, what just happened? What did I miss? Why is this so obvious to this guy, and it's not obvious to me? Apparently, I must be missing a lot of, well, sort of technical knowledge about infrastructure. And I basically decided as soon as I settled down and got acquainted with the functional aspects of the software that I'm working on to also look into the infrastructure, which is my maze. And if the people are really bored and neurotic, just look behind and solve this easy puzzle in the meanwhile. So I just decided for myself that I would try to absorb as much from the operational people as possible. So I would sit beside them when we were deploying code on different environments. I would be helping out in production incidents, trying to figure out what was happening, not only on the functional bits of my application, but also on the technical side. And I just decided for myself, every minute spent with these guys is probably beneficial both for me as well as the customer that I'm working for at the same time. So it took me a few months where I sort of got more into the operations side of my job. And at some point I was requested if I would be willing to also do pager duty, which was kind of a big step for me. I knew my way around systems, logging in, but it's really something different if you have a pager and you are responsible for, say, 400 systems running somewhere that you don't really know about. And it's not only the systems that are running or supporting your piece of code, but it's just any system for a wide range of customers. And I was really, well, sort of afraid of doing so. And I decided for myself, if the operations people are actually willing to give me the keys to the fortress, then I'm okay with being a very expensive telephone operator, because I would probably just be picking up my phone in the middle of the night and call somebody who I thought could actually solve the problem at hand. And I have to say, it was actually not that bad after all. I also have to admit that I usually end up on Stack Overflow at 3 a.m., for instance, when I find some weird pager going off with a very cryptic message saying NTP problem, machine drifted off. Then I have to sort of do the research myself, and at some point I just have to decide, okay, these operations people are better off tackling this particular problem than me, and then actually call someone. But you actually learn a lot on the job, and it has not only been beneficial to me, as I explained, but it now also helps in trying to help the customer that I work for. When they have questions that involve the infrastructure side of the solution that we are building, I'm now capable of providing them with answers without having to make everything up or having to refer to another colleague that is better suited at answering these questions. So I actually enjoyed this whole journey. Of course, I like to sleep as well, but I guess it's worth the price. I really enjoyed picking up all of these skills. And I learned also that most people that are really knowledgeable about a particular field of expertise are usually also the people that are willing to help you and willing to give you new tricks and try to explain what their day-to-day job is and how they do it and why they do it in a particular way. It will just expand your horizon and expand your capabilities as well by doing so. So most people that are knowledgeable are maybe a bit intimidating, but just try and see what happens. Make a conversation, start a conversation, try to make them talk to you about what they do, because they actually like doing so. That's me, in a nutshell. Are there any burning questions about what's it like for a software engineer to join such a company, or something about the company, Schuberg? Now I need to have one of these.
Hello, thank you for the talk. I have a question as someone that has an extensive background in being a sysadmin. How do you avoid a situation when you're on a pager duty and you have, say, 50 developers, you gave them all the rights to the production, and then every week one developer will break something, and in the middle of the night you've got this lovely call. It's like, oh, the production server is down, everything is on fire. And after a couple of weeks, you just want to murder them all.
That's scary. I'm actually not sure. I can think about it just on top of my head. Find the most suitable people to transfer knowledge. That would be a first. Maybe make them part of your problem as well, because if it's a shared problem, then more people will care about the position that you are in right now. So I can imagine that if you are the only person being responsible in the end, but different people try to sort of work around you and find a way to break the system, then it's all on your plate. Making the plate maybe a bit bigger by just ask around. If people want to get to know more about your daily job and find a way to make them co-owners of the problem that you have, then probably that will sort of be the stone in the pond that will ripple out, and they will also tell other developers, like, hey, guys, what you just did last week that broke the system, probably not a good idea. That would be my advice. But
if I can hook into that,
Sure thing.
I think one of the things. Yeah, it's already on. I think one of the things that you need to learn as a developer first is when to stop. Basically, the moment you're in doubt about something, stop and ask someone. So every time I pick something up in our production environment, and I'm like, I'm not completely sure, even if it's 1%, I just ask someone. And then next time I will know it. So it's a sort of discipline as well. Know your boundaries, know when to stop. And that can be really tricky, and it only works with certain people, of course. But I think that's the first thing. So learn when to stop. And like I said before, like what I learned, like think ahead, like train them to learn like what can go wrong and how do I fix it first before actually thinking about solving the problem you're trying to solve. Go to a state that you know.
And I would like to add that I can't listen to myself talk at the same time, sorry. I would like to add that instead of solving it for them, have them sit with you and solve it together. Because I'm personally a type of person that might not know the solution. So, but if I sit and I watch you the first time, then the next time I might try to do that myself. So by trusting and by working together, you find that in the future you might actually be training these developers to handle a little bit of your load, so that you have less of a load in the future. But it starts with trust and starts with working together.
All right, thank you.
another question.
Yeah, I was wondering, is there any limitation on what a developer can do. Like, for instance, for me personally, my biggest issue is parties like risk and legal, because if you're dealing with personal, like privacy-sensitive information, financial transactions, I personally have a lot of rights through the entire OTAP street, I'd say, but the auditors have a lot of issues with that, and also, can they really do everything, or is there like a limit to what you developers are allowed to do?
I would say that there really is no limit. Actually, last week I was trying to access, I think it was a firewall or a load balancer that I didn't have access to. So there was one place in the infrastructure of the client that I work for that I actually had to have a different way of authentication for the system. But I guess if I would ask for it, I would be allowed still to do that. And I think your question is, you would get a decent answer with the auditing guy that works at Schuberg Philis. And I don't know the answer exactly, but I know that there has been discussions about from customers about the way we work, and we basically are in the position where we can say to the customer, please trust us. We only hire the people that know when to stop, which is very important, I think, what Raymond mentioned. So you really have to just know when not to do the RM minus, you know. So it's better to make sure that it sort of sits in your system, that you know when to stop and when to ask for help.
Can you hear me? Oh. I also can add to that by allowing developers to have access to sensitive information. It makes developers more aware that there is sensitive information that we are dealing with and that we are programming with. So we make more intelligent decisions. We make encryption type things around it. We make sure that it's not hard-coded. We make sure that it's not thrown and put into the wrong places. So by giving us access, it makes us smarter as developers so that there aren't mistakes and leaks in the future.
And to be completely honest, so Schuberg Philis started out as an infrastructure company, right? So of course, it would be logical for these engineers to have access to all the systems that we run. We are moving away from there, or not completely moving away, but we are expanding the capabilities of the company to also do software engineering. And it might be that at some point in the future, customers really have bigger questions about the capabilities that we have, but time will tell. So far, it has worked out really great. So you just know that with the great power comes great responsibility, and it makes you sort of aware of what you're doing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I think this question might be for Sarah, because what you said about the several varieties of emotions you went through, and one of which was like you didn't feel good enough, probably about yourself. In what way might it be a natural thing in human nature, or maybe otherwise being affected by external effects, like for example the industry or itself, like this IT industry is basically about like the newest, the biggest, the better, the fastest, like being an expert. If you ever see job advertisements these days, they only want to have like expert people or being so good and bad. Does that influence it as well? And in what way would that, for example, would you respond to that by yourself, or giving yourself standing above, like, okay, this might be the case, it might be the demands from the industry, the image which has been created about IT people, but like, hey, this is me, and you have to deal with it in a way. How can you respond to that? Like, okay, this is me, and what you do then?
I've been a software engineer a long time, and if you noticed...
Still then you doubt yourself.
Yeah, if you notice, I'm a woman. And when I entered the field, I was one of 100 more in my class, so I was called the girl. So I had to, from the very beginning, deal with feelings of insecurity or defending myself that I belong here. I might not have as much testosterone. I might get emotional sometimes, but I'm just as smart as you. I'm just as capable. But yes, also by being an engineer for as many years as I have, when I entered the field, I was dealing with assembly. I was dealing with really ones and zeros. And if you imagine how the industry has changed over the years, and you always have to keep up. And you find that we are all human. And I think when I was a younger engineer, so I would say especially in my 30s, that's when you get this feeling of confidence. I've been around the block for a while, but also where you get the most defensive, because things are changing so fast, and you're dealing with all of these newbies that come into the field and they know it all. And you feel like you have to explain yourself, like, yeah, I might not know exactly that particular library or exactly that thing that you're working with now, but it doesn't mean that I'm not smart and that I'm not capable. When you enter the 40s, which I'm in now, you find that you get a bit more calm, so you get a little bit more confident. You've been around the block, and you know that you've seen some of the trends, like microservices. You saw them come and you saw them go. You saw a lot of these languages that have gone more functional and gone away from functional. You've seen the flow, but you have also seen people that came in, they just got out of university, they have all these ideas, and also be smashed the next day because there's someone else that's smarter. So you become humble, you learn how to listen, you learn how to gain knowledge from the people around you, but you also learn a calm confidence. You don't have to defend yourself all the time. Like, if you've been here that long, then you must know something. There must be something between those ears of yours. But we're human, so we have emotions. We have feelings where we have more confidence, not confidence. I'm not a person that likes to give presentations. I'm really nervous, but I do it anyway. So you will have those kind of experiences all through your career. But yeah, does that answer your question?
It certainly does. Yeah, maybe even more than that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Before you take your headphones off, I'd just like to ask you to vote for the session and to visit the Cisco Lab, because it's only today and you can win an invitation to the Codemotion dinner. Thank you.
Thank you very much.